sci-fi fans of the planet's hottest entertainment with an edge. I'm Jaime En Fuego, so stoked to be welcoming you to my namesake program, Enfuegotainment. That's right, and you can just call me Fuego for short, and this is continued coverage as we approach Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, coming this December, and I've basically been going back and watching one Star Wars film a month and then also supplementing with some comic book stuff, novels, and that coverage is going to continue in the complete canon coverage as the months go on here in the year of 19 for all you Stephen King fans out there. But so this is a film that I'm not wearing a Star Wars shirt because I've already reviewed this movie on the channel when it was initially released back in 2016. And I have to say, upon just rewatching Rogue One just now, this is my favorite Star Wars film, easily, leaps and bounds by far, aside from the original 3 films. And so I'm not going to break this down with Bueno and Malo and Feo like I normally do. This is basically Rogue One revisited. I love this movie, like, immensely and insanely. I love the look of it. I love the tone. I love the fact that it is not all frilly and super humorous and glitzy. This is a dark and gritty movie, and that's why I love it so much, honestly, because we see so much bright stuff in the Star Wars universe, especially like I'm watching, you know, the Clone Wars right now, and then I'm going to segue into Rebels and all that stuff. And while there are really cool dramatic beats in even the prequels, even, you know, those aforementioned animated series and stuff, but it's too kiddie for me sometimes, and this is not a kid's movie. This is violent, it's brutal at times, and it really shows that dark underbelly of the galaxy far, far away. Another reason why I love it so much. Apparently this was originally an idea that was pitched like a decade before it actually came out, because there was a proposed live-action television series called Star Wars Underworld that was in development, and one of the episodes was going to be about the team of rebels that actually stole the Death Star plans. They ended up reworking it into a feature. That TV series unfortunately never came to be, but if we end up getting this amazing movie with this terrific cast in its place, as much as I, you know, would have loved to have seen that Underworld series when it was initially announced. But now, you know, we have live action stuff. We have 2 different Star Wars live action series in development, besides The Mandalorian, which appears to have a very similar dark and gritty tone to this. And that's going to deal with, you know, bounty hunters and things of that nature, which is I'm super, super excited about. Disney Plus, you're going to be getting my money, I guarantee it. But there's also a spin-off series with Cassian Andor, which is Diego Luna's character from this. That's also in development. I love this period in the Star Wars universe. I really, really genuinely do. It's that fascinating, like, calm before the storm, getting all our pieces in place. And so, for those who, for whatever reason, are watching this review and don't know what this is all about, Jyn Erso, played awesomely by Felicity Jones. We join her character at the very beginning of this film when her father, played by Mads Mikkelsen, is taken into custody by the Imperials, and you know, her mother is killed, and her father is taken by Ben Mendelsohn's Krennic character because of the fact that the Imperials need him. They have this weapon that they want to build, and just his expertise as an engineer and as a, you know, plans builder, all this different stuff. Like, I mean, he is insanely imperative to their plans for, you know, just further just domination and just basically, like, you know, whip your big thing out and show it to everybody sort of thing. And yeah, that's essentially what the Death Star was, to strike fear into everyone in the galaxy, and that the Imperials are, you know, ruling with, you know, Vader and Tarkin and the Emperor and so on. And there are some people who were critical about some of the CGI in this film, and I personally don't mind it, especially upon this rewatch. So General Tarkin is recreated through CGI, complete CGI, and then they do the same thing with Leia at the very end of the film, and, you know, I don't mind either of those things. I really don't. I feel like, you know, there's some stiffness of movement with these 2 characters at times, but I mean, I don't know, it was a cool... It's a film full of Easter eggs. We see some of the pilots, you know, from like the original A New Hope film, which is really dope. They used some old footage from that and just injected it in. I still remember the insane elation amongst audience members when some of those original pilots just popped up on screen. That's the thing. This movie perfectly bridges the prequels, which I've grown to tolerate, with the original trilogy, obviously, that I just adore immensely and just, always will hold a special place in my heart. But, Jedi is my personal favorite, but, there's merits in Revenge of the Sith, and we get some of that crossover continuity, You got Jimmy Smith showing up, as the Bail Organa, I want to say his name is, but yeah, basically, the uncle of Princess Leia, and we also see the lady who played Magma. I mean, there's really cool continuity, and we even, getting Saw Gerrera in this, played now by Forrest Whitaker, that's another cool little nod. He was a character introduced in the Clone Wars, and Forrest ends up actually voicing him in the Rebels show as well. But as cool as those little Easter eggs, those little nods, we even get a little cameo from C-3PO and R2, they have to pop up in every Star Wars movie. It's just a given thing. But yeah, guys, I have to say, it's really the strength of the characters, this quartet of sorts, if I'm going to use my Stephen King terminology, that I find so cool. Donnie Yen as the blind guy who is not a Jedi, but, I'm one with the Force and the Force is with me. I'm one with the Force and the Force is with me. He's a terrific character. He's super cool. He's blind, and yet he's this badass fighter. And his scene in particular, where, it ends up being a suicide mission, obviously. And that's one of the most poignant aspects of this story, is the fact that I thought at least, Jin was going to survive. I was like, maybe Cassian, maybe the two of them. And I was expecting it the whole time. And this is a movie that did what I did not expect. Killed everybody, Alan Tudyk voicing the K2SO, the awesome robot, he's great. But the cast is just so good, man. Diego Luna, Felicity Jones, Donnie Yen, as I mentioned. Even Forrest, when he's on there, it's crazy because we see the end of Saw's character. He stays on that moon when they're testing the Death Star, and he's just like, no, I'm not going to escape with you guys. I'm just going to stay here, where, It was almost like an offshoot of the Rebel Alliance of sorts, because of the fact that he's hanging out doing his own thing as opposed to working directly with the Alliance, although he still has the same intents. He's just working much more rogue, I guess you could say, as opposed to with that larger, mobilized organization of peeps and stuff. And so, I don't know, it's the strength of the characters, it's this cool story. The cast is terrific. Between Ben Mendelsohn, playing Krennic, playing our villain, and he doesn't play it as like a snivelly, spineless, he has kind of moments where that transpires, but really, as a whole, he's kind of foreboding a little bit, He does play, his villainousness is solid, in my opinion. It's like that, this porridge is just right. It's like that perfect balance where, there is a little bit of sliminess at times, and he has that really cool scene where he goes to Vader's planet and Vader like chokes him up and stuff, and and those are other things. Getting to see Vader in this movie, damn, this is like the most badass we've seen Vader pretty much, like, well, obviously since the original trilogy, but maybe the most badass ever put to screen, with the way he's dispatching people, on that ship at the end of the film as he's trying to make sure those planes don't get out, and he's just killing fools and throwing them and all this stuff. And yeah, it's just, it's a fan servicey film, but it really rises beyond that. And there was some skepticism. They're like, oh man, Tony Gilroy's directing additional scenes, Gareth Edwards is off the project. Gareth Edwards, the Godzilla director, still got credit for it, but this was like the opposite of Solo for me, in the fact that, whereas that had the troubled behind the scenes stuff, and Disney can never seem to figure out stuff with their directors unless their name is J.J. Abrams. But yeah, it's the finished product, especially like some of those additional scenes, I'm assuming made the film better, because I love the finished product of this film. I love the look of it, I love the cast, the acting, and it's a very simple story, but executed in a very interesting fashion. I still remember as a little kid, I was like, why would they build this thing, and yet why would it have this little sweet spot? What kind of idiot put this together? That's totally unbelievable. This gives credence to that and gives a very worthwhile explanation. The fact that, okay, Jin's father, played by Mickelson, was a rebel sympathetic. He was a rebel sympathizer, I guess you could say. And so, yeah, that's why he would put that tiny little chink in the armor, so that there would be a means. And everybody pretty much in this is willing to sacrifice their life for the cause, and pretty much everybody does, which, is what makes it so fascinating to me. It really shows the importance and gives precedence and legit meaning to the importance of what they're doing here. You know, if they're all willing to lay down their lives for the cause, you know, that sort of sacrifice is what continues to give hope, and hope is the theme throughout this movie. It's mentioned a few different times. It's the last word mentioned in the film by Leia herself, you know? And so I can't get over just how much I adore this movie, and the action throughout is some of the best in any Star Wars film ever, ever, ever. Whether it's, you know, whether it's like the big destruction of the Death Star, well, not of the Death Star, but that the Death Star can bring about, you know, those scenes and with the effects there are super cool. But I just love the fighting of the ground troops, and like just it's a war film. That's what they set out to make. That is definitely what they were successful with, in my estimation. And also, like, even like fighting on the beaches and some of the things that we had never seen in a Star Wars film before. I mean, they went to a planet that we'd never seen before. I mean, this movie does so much cool stuff. And it was actually, as I was reading some of the info on the Wikipedias and stuff, it is only the third Star Wars film ever to break $1 billion. So it joins the $1 billion club along with The Force Awakens, surprise, surprise, and The Phantom Menace. This is the third highest grossing Star Wars film of all time. The critics loved it. Most fans were pretty cool with it, except for some of the little gripey stuff, you know. And I don't know. I struggle to find a lot wrong with this movie. Some people think the characters are underdeveloped, and yeah, that is the case with some of the grunts that we get in the third act when, you know, we actually do have some mobilization. But I honestly thought the development of the Imperial Defector, the pilot, I mean, even Donnie Yen's character and his, his like brute sidekick guy, I mean, maybe they were a little underdeveloped, but I mean, K2SO, Tudyk brought so much personality to that role. He induces some of the best laughs, but they're not like belly laugh, goofy, silly, stupid laughs. They're snarky laughs, and they're very good. Diego and Felicity play it pretty straight throughout, but I'm glad they didn't turn it into like a love thing between the two of them. There's more important things at hand, man, and I really dug that. I could legitimately just go on and on about this film and how much I absolutely adore it. It rose above behind-the-scenes issues. It rose above the skepticism of people where they're like, oh, there isn't going to be a crawl, there's, you know, this and that. It exceeded all of my expectations, in all honesty, when I initially saw it in theaters. And if you want to see my fresh, like, just, you know, thoughts right after walking out of it, myself, Jacoby Beef, who was a buddy of mine who in the early days here in Enfuegotainment, along with Cecil Laird, my cohort in crime from the horror show. That's right, we have a very lengthy discussion about this film when we had first walked out of it back in December of 2016. And so, yeah, if you want to see some deeper thoughts and some thoughts like, you know, right after walking out of the theater, that's where you can find them. It's in the Fresca Fuego review playlist here on Enfuegotainment. But I just gotta say, once again, I love Rogue One. Absolutely adore it. So I guess that's going to be the end of the proceedings. I have Mad Monster Party to attend all weekend in Fountain Hills, Arizona. Mad Monster Arizona is one of my favorite horror conventions, and just to remind you, I do a YouTube channel which is much larger than my things here. It's called The Horror Show. You can find it at youtube.com/The Horror Show channel. We do 1, sometimes 2 episodes a day in certain circumstances, and yes, all kinds of spooktacular stuff. Trailer reactions, film, television, comic reviews, book reviews. I mean, we are all over the place with it. But yes, I have been Jaime En Fuego, and you can find me on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, obviously here on YouTube. So if you haven't done the like, the share, the subscribe thing, I would greatly appreciate it. My new review this week actually went up a couple days early because I got to go to an early press screening of Yesterday, the Beatles movie, and I had some fun with it. It's cute, but not particularly memorable. If you want to see my entire thoughts, you can also check that out here, and there's more Star Wars coverage of the comic and the novel variety coming very soon. But guess what? We're there. We are approaching my reviews of the original trilogy next up over the following few months, and I cannot wait. So I guess until the real of comes around once more, I will say to all of you, hasta luego, cinemigos, and constant viewers alike. I am very hopeful that we get to share more of this film palaver sooner rather than later. And until then, you know the drill. May the Force be with you.